James and Sonya Kellogg are going to step us through their testimony, which I think you will find to be amazing and wonderful. And they are coming up now. Do you guys want to stand, sit? You good? Excellent. Okay. All right. You guys been coming here to Northwest for 2? Oh, 4? Okay, 4. Hey, yep, that's right, the back row. They've been in the back row. So, excellent. Well, I'll pray real quick and then you guys can roll. Heavenly Father, we just thank you for bringing James and Sonya into our lives. We thank you for the love that we have for them and that they return. We just ask, Father, you be with them now. And I know that the words you say today is going to touch some lives out here. And we give God all the glory. Amen.
Amen. All right. Good morning. Good morning. Well, first of all, thanks for letting us get up here and talk. We enjoy doing this and wanted to share our story. It's not too long, so we won't keep you through lunch or anything like that. So the other thing that we want to thank everybody out here for is for being our church family. This was a rough process.
Very much so. And we've had a lot of support here, and we appreciate it greatly.
So we're going to get started. The way we like to do things is start with the verses that we're going to be talking about, and then we'll get into stuff. So keep these verses in your mind as we're going through things. First is Luke 16:10. Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much, and whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with much. So what does that mean? That means God trusts you. He gives you a little and you do good. If He gives you a little and you don't, not so much. This actually, the financial course that is coming up, you'll learn about this one in there if you take the course. That's where we learned about it. Second verse, 2 Peter 1:3. For those of you who were at VBS, this was our verse, right? But it applies to us. His divine power has given us everything required for life and godliness through Him who called us by His own glory and goodness. Notice, 2 Peter doesn't say, God's going to give you everything you want. He says everything that's required. Now, does that mean just money, just food? Sometimes it means experience. Sometimes it means putting you in the depths so you have to count on Him for us control freaks. That's what it sometimes means.
And this one's mine. I was reading, and as I came across this, I realized that's how I came to Christ. Mark 9:36 and 37. Jesus was speaking and taking a child. He set him before them, and taking him in his arms, he said to them, whoever receives one child like this in my name receives me. And whoever receives me does not receive me, but him who sent me. So to put this in perspective, when I started coming to church here, when we became foster parents, I was not a believer. I was not a follower. And we took children first. I received children into my home. I received them into my family. And it was after that Jesus started talking to me.
But going back a ways.
To the
beginning. So we didn't even know we had started our journey. Our journey started when I was 5.
Yes, you had a friend that was adopted, right? And you thought that was just the coolest thing ever.
It was, because she looked like her parents, and I didn't look like mine. And so we started at that point knowing, I started at that point thinking adoption was cool. And that's just really where we started. Then in 1994, I met this guy at work. I know, work romance. Not supposed to happen. He was cute.
You heard stories, you were warmed away about that family.
Yeah, all those good things.
Right.
We got married in 1996. Several years go by, and James reveals he doesn't believe in God. So we have the conversation. You know you're going to hell, right?
And if I don't believe in God, I don't believe in...
No. And then we had the crying. The crying on my heart, not his. Of just believe. You're agnostic. You don't know whether there's a God or not. Just tell me you believe so I can be happy. But my favorite conversation was, okay, you don't believe in Christ? Why am I buying you Christmas presents? I believe in Christ. Buy me presents.
But it's the American way.
So we have these conversations, and we decide that we're going to have kids. Only we can't have kids. And we tried. And we couldn't. And I went, yay, we get to adopt. And then one of my friends runs an adoption agency, so I'm like, oh, we're going to go see Stephanie. This is going to be easy.
Nothing to it, piece of cake.
Not so. I don't know if anybody's gone through adoption, but the paperwork is as tall as James.
It's overwhelming.
Yes.
I looked at that and looked at it and looked at it. Couldn't do a thing with it. It was insurmountable.
So at this point, I'm going to church. He's not. I'm tithing on the merit of the message. So, hey, preacher did well. I stuck in 5 more books. That was all good stuff, right? That's what we're supposed to do. Not being obedient, right? So then, after we decided that paperwork was insurmountable, we decided to foster children. Because that was just, hey, come for a class.
Well, look into foster.
Look into foster, yeah.
There's a class, so let's take the class and see how it goes. So we started in a class. 3 months worth.
Give or take.
Something like that.
Yeah.
But that wasn't too hard.
Yeah. So we received our first foster children. 2 little boys, and most of you remember them. They were 3 and 4 when we got them. They did reintegrate with their dad, and they're doing great, by the way. And their dad's done the right things, and we're so proud of him. But we just took it one step at a time is the big thing. And James started coming to church at that point. And so then we started tithing more because there was 4 of us coming to church, and we weren't coming here yet. The church that we were attending merged with another church. That other church did not meet our needs. So we started looking, and we came here and became family very quickly.
Yeah.
Very quickly.
Came here one weekend, and the 2 boys went to children's church. And they came out telling us about the rock.
Yeah.
And had learned something that day.
Yeah.
And so we were reasonably impressed and decided to stay here for the boys because such a good job was done there.
And it was important for us that the boys be in a church where they were accepted and where they learned. And still, we're doing this, and he still doesn't believe.
Yeah. Now, bear in mind, even though I wasn't a believer, in my secular way, I understood that there were things that could be gained from church that were valuable in this world, in this life. A giving attitude, respecting others. There's all kinds of things that are taught in the church that, whether you're a believer or not, are still beneficial for a child to learn. And I knew that. And I thought it was important for them to be here because I didn't think they were necessarily going to get that education anywhere else. They're not going to get it from their friends. That's not necessarily something that's focused on at school. There's a unique perspective here and at a church that doesn't come in other places. So with that in mind, I thought, yeah, I need to be a good example. I need to go to church for these kids and help them understand what they should be growing into.
So at the time, we had the 2 boys, and then we got a teenager. And I bet a lot of you remember Dallas. That's the teenager we're talking about. And then the 2 boys moved home, and we were left with a teenager in the house, which is
The two boys were easier.
Teenagers, right? So at that point, we started taking in respite. And what respite is you take children in for the weekend to give other foster parents a break. Now, it might be a week, might be a weekend, whatever. We also started talking on foster family panels, which means that we went and we were the experienced people that told stories about all the fun things we had gone through and how beautiful and wonderful and perfect fostering can be, or how beautiful, wonderful, and not so perfect fostering can be. But in one of those, I said, I can do anything for a weekend.
Yeah.
And my worker was there.
She remembered that?
Yes, she did. She did. But at the time, we were just trying to help other foster parents, trying to help teach what we hadn't learned in class. But at the same time, God started touching James.
And in odd ways for what I expected. So I like to read, I like to watch movies, and I like horror genre, Stephen King, things of that nature, and was surprised to start seeing things in those books that were speaking to me that I felt like were God led.
So then our forever family starts, but we don't know it, which is great. So in July 2016, we get this phone call from our worker. Hey, I know you said you'd never take anybody under 3, but in panel you said you could handle anything for a weekend. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. And she says to me, Sonya, I'm leaving on vacation in an hour and a half. And I had a placement for this baby, but that placement just fell through. And I can't go if I don't have a placement for this baby. Could you just take this 7-week-old baby for the weekend? Well, I liked my worker, lucky for her, lucky for us. And so I said, oh, sure, I can handle a baby for the weekend. It's just the weekend. So it's July, and I know that I do not want to bond with this baby because that's not my job. I'm just there as a caregiver for the weekend. So in July, I am wearing jeans and boots and long sleeve shirts so none of my skin touches his skin because I don't want any of that skin bonding stuff. When I'm feeding him, I'm looking away. Not looking into those little brown eyes. And I take a few pictures, but not a lot. Just, he was cute. He was cute. And he slept when the vacuum ran. So, that was neat.
Still loves the vacuum.
Yeah, he does. So in August 2016, we went to a training. And the foster parents of this little baby are there. And so I get him out of his car seat just to say hi and to see how much he's grown. And this little girl comes up to me. Hi, that's my little brother.
And we said, hello, what is your name? And it was Ella. And she says, this is my older brother. And he's over there staring at us. We're like, who are you? What are you doing with my little brother? But he didn't say anything.
Not a word, you can believe it? I know in the back of the church you all are thinking, really?
Yeah,
Didn't say a word.
He's gotten over that.
So during that month, we were also contacted about adopting 2 little boys. Not the 2 we have.
Yeah.
And they said you have 24 hours to decide, make a decision.
It was a neat process. They gave us a piece of paper with a couple pictures and a few paragraphs saying these are the boys. Do you want them or not? What?
We said yes.
Sure.
Why not? Why not? We would like to adopt 2 little boys. Oh, and they need to be moved before school.
In a week?
In a week. Hadn't met the boys. So they send us that mountain load of paperwork. that we didn't want to do for adoption. They sent that to us. So we started. Now let me remind you, we only have a teenager in the house. So we don't have little ones running around going, help me, help me, help me. So we are actually able to get through the paperwork. And the process on the other side halted. It just stopped. They decided with the 2 boys they weren't going to move them as fast as they had originally planned, that wasn't the best thing for the boys, which we knew, and we were happy that they made that decision. So we're going along, and September comes, and we still don't have the boys, but our paperwork's done.
Yeah, got through the mountain.
Yeah, got through all of that. And I had a day where every time I picked up my phone, and it was on random photo, up pops this little boy's picture, the baby. And I did not take that many pictures. But every time I picked up my phone, it was a picture of this baby. And we had an opportunity to go to dinner that night, and I had told James, I said, something's going on. I keep seeing this picture. And as we're at dinner, I pull out my phone for something, and there's a picture of him again. I said, what are we going to do? We're in line for these 2, but what if they call about the 3?
Well,
what are we going to do?
What else do we do? We take all 5.
The next day, we got the phone call. Hey, those 3 are available. Is there any way you could take them? And I said to my worker, yes. And she says, shouldn't you talk to James? And I said, no, we've already had this conversation. And God speaks to people in different ways. I never thought he'd use my cell phone. But obviously I wasn't getting it. So he went to any way he could so that we were prepared to just say, yes, bring them. Bring them. We want them, bring them. We'll take all 5, not a big deal. So one of the fun things as foster parents is you get to be fingerprinted. So these 3 little ones came for a weekend, and we went to get fingerprinted because they were redoing the fingerprints. While we're out at lunch, our workers called and they said, you can't have all 5. Which are you going to choose?
Well, we met the 3.
But we hadn't met the 2.
They were just still pictures on a piece of paper.
So we said, great, we'll take the 3. So they take our name out of the 2, put our name in for fostering the 3. Now mind you, the 2 were adoption, the 3 were just foster. And it was excruciating.
Yeah.
So got all that done quickly. It's the only time the system has moved quickly. And the next day, we get the phone call, hey, you can't have the 3 either.
So we skipped over a little something in the time frame.
Sorry.
That's all right. So with the 3 coming on as foster, if we back up just a few days, how it was done is they did what they call a pre-placement visit. And so what we had is we had the 3 for a weekend, where they were going to visit for a weekend, they go back to their foster parents, and then the next weekend they were supposed to move in. And so we had that first weekend with the 3 kids. And their foster mom drops them off and says wonderful things like, welcome to your forever home. Oh. You should call them mommy and daddy. She doesn't know that. That's not something you should say as a foster parent, because you don't know. Any number of things could happen that prevents that. Well, after, so we had a great weekend with the kids. We're looking forward to seeing you next weekend.
Oh, and running around in October in shorts and a tank top because I'm bonded with that baby now.
Right.
Looking in his little brown eyes.
Yeah, great weekend. So all of this stuff now with the decision between the 3 and the 2, that happens in that next week, like Wednesday. And then Thursday, we get the call from our workers saying the foster parent has changed their mind. The kids aren't going to be moving in with you permanently. They're going back and they're staying with their existing foster parent. We fought as hard as we could and persuaded as much as we could, but the decision was made. That's the foster family they've been with for 2 years. They're going to stay there. You get a weekend, and then they're moving back. So we got a weekend. We had another good weekend with them. The kids hadn't been told that they weren't moving in. So that Sunday that they're going back, now we get to tell these 3 that are very excited about moving in with us, that they have to go back where they've been living. There were tears, as you can imagine. It was not a happy time. But they needed to know it was going to happen. And that's what happened. And so they went back to their foster family. We went back to having our teenager.
Yeah. And grieving.
Yes, terrible loss.
So one of the things that I had felt for a long time was that James was going to come to the Lord, and he was going to come to the Lord through loss. I thought it was me. It wasn't.
It was these kids.
Yep.
A couple weeks later.
Yeah, so a couple weeks later, Dallas is off at work. James and I are both sick. Like Terry said this morning, sometimes God makes you sick, so you stop. And that's what he did. So, you know, I'm one of those morning people. I get up, I get ready. Okay, it's the day. Well, that day I didn't, so I didn't take a shower until like noon. And my head was killing me, and I'm laying on the bed, and James is in taking a shower about 1 o'clock, and I hear him crying. And I'm like, oh my gosh, did he fall? That's the first thing. Is he hurt? And so I rush in and I said, what's going on? And he's like, give me a minute. Give me a minute. Okay? Okay.
So I've heard that as pierced. When Jesus comes to you, pierced through the heart. And that's what it was. It was just the strongest thing I've ever felt right through me. And I just broke down.
So the next day we're up here. I remember Megan going, is this really happening? Yeah, it's really happening. James came to the Lord. And then we started tithing on both his and my net income. And then we got him baptized, and we started taking the financial class. The very same financial class that's being offered in January. So take the financial class. We didn't have this plan, but take the financial class. It's a good class.
Right.
So it gave us a different perspective on money. And it told us that we needed to be tithing 10% of gross, not net.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
How much?
So we went home. So we heard that on a Sunday, and we went home and we had the conversation of, wow, that's not what we thought. We thought we were being obedient, but we weren't. And so we decided we're going to be obedient. Doesn't matter what else has to go. We are going to tithe 10% of gross. So we made that decision, hadn't written a check or anything. God knew what was in our hearts. And the next day we get a phone call. Hey, the 3 are available. They're moving back to your house. February 6th. The very next day. And of course it was, don't you need to call James? No, I don't need to call James. Get them home and get them to us as soon as you can. We want them home. Now,
the worker said, all right, no pre-placement visit. You've already met the kids. This is the date they're moving in. Done.
yeah. So through this process, then they said to us, okay, we want you to consider adopting these 3. Would you consider adopting these 3? Again, the answer was, sure, why not? yes, we want these 3. We want to adopt them. Our paperwork is already done at this point. To be real honest, there's no way I could have done that paperwork with these 3 at the ages they were. There was just no way. But I could have done that and worked and taken care of them and everything. So, so we start in the court battle. And in August of 2017, the judge decides that there will be a BIS. Now, what is a BIS? It's the best interest staffing. And it's a big fancy name for people get together and that know the case or that may not know the case. They listen to what is to be presented and they determine who the kids are going to live with. And at this point, there's us and one biologic relative that are interested in adopting the children. At this point, we're told by a friend, get a lawyer. My first answer is, no, I don't need a lawyer. I'm ethically against lawyers. And all of our other friends said, get a lawyer. So we start looking for a lawyer. Now, mind you, I've been on panels with a lawyer by the name of Doug.
Good guy.
Great guy. I call him, I'm like, Doug, need ya. And he says, sorry, don't do that work. Oh no, oh no, oh no. But I've got this friend that does. Great. So I call the friend. Yeah, I'm not really interested in your case. Okay, really not interested in my case. Well, I do everything pro bono and I just really don't have time. But if you're willing to pay, there's this great gal by the name of Megan who will take care of you. So, you know, lawyers aren't cheap. Not at all.
No, not, and she's not cheap for a lawyer.
But she's good. She's good.
That's true.
But if we back up a little bit again and start looking at some history, a year before this, a year or two before this, the company I worked for was sold. And the new company that took over decided that a few people were not needed. I was not one of them, but I knew several people that were. And one of those individuals that was not needed went to another company, and as soon as within a week of him getting there, he calls me up and he says, hey, are you still happy? And I said, well, yeah, I'm doing fine. He says, well, could you help me out anyway? And I said, well, let me come take a look at what you got and we'll see if we can work something out. And so I went to the new company he started working for, looked at what they have, what they needed, and decided that, hey, maybe I could help them out with some programming, some report writing, some computer work for a nominal fee. And so I started a contract position, just working a few hours a day, hour or two a day at that place. And I started doing that. Well, we didn't have that money earmarked for certain things. So we just kind of built up. Built up a little bit, replaced the roof, built up. And it had been sitting there. I was, had big plans for it once it got big enough. But that hadn't happened yet. So once we get to the point of needing a lawyer, I have this large chunk of money, a large chunk of cash, sitting in the bank, available for what we needed. Covered it, all of it, and had some left over.
So, again, God was providing and we didn't know. Now, during this time also, He's got brand new faith. And that is an awesome thing because it's strong. Because during this court battle, mine was gone.
And from the moment these kids moved in, from that first weekend in October, they were my kids. There was no question. It was an immediate family. It was immediately the way it was supposed to be. And there was no question. There was nothing else. I had complete faith through all of this, countless court settings, and this happened and that happened, and there was a lot that happened. Things that our lawyers saying, I've never seen this before, happened. And through pretty much all of it, they were my kids, period.
So in September, they decided that we are the ones to get them. Okay, well then there's appeals, and there's all this stuff that we go through court. And those of you who went through it with us, thank you. And we're smoothing over a lot of it because it's awful, awful what you had to go through.
It was an ordeal.
But his faith stayed strong, and mine didn't. And God provided that for us too, which was awesome because I was ready to check it more than once. Just go, I'm done. These should be our kids, but I'm just so scared. So scared.
Until pretty close to the last one.
Yeah.
So we had right at about the end of all of these court battles and everything. We're to the point where, all right, we've made an agreement with the state. We've got the paperwork filled out that says these are going to be our kids. We have signed it.
And that paperwork also provided funding for the kids. So it provided some insurance for the kids and some extra money. And we had decided with that extra money that was going to be their college fund and that we weren't going to touch it unless something catastrophic happened.
Right.
And we weren't in it for the money by any means.
But that was going to be for them. That was there. That was, from the state for support of them. That was going to all go to them. That was the plan. And so we had signed this document. We sent it to the state, and it needed, one signature of approval. And then we heard that the person that approved it, the secretary, not only denied it, but basically said, no, we're not going to give the kids to this couple. We're going to give them to the biological instead. One person. After all of this, supported us. One person changed that. That shook me in a big way. And that filled me with fear. And that was a couple of days before the next court date. And that whole day, as I'm filled with fear, I have a song running through my head. All day. You might have heard it. Fear is a liar. But that didn't get through to me, apparently. Because I was still filled with fear. And the next morning, I'm going to work, and I put it on a message on a radio, and I hear this song. I've never heard it before. I've not heard it since. But the gist of this message was, give it a couple of days. It's going to be okay. And I felt better. 2 days later, we go to court. We present our case to the judge, and the judge says, we're not going to follow the recommendation of the secretary. I can override her. These kids are yours. We're going to direct place.
So what direct placement does is it takes the children out of DCF custody. It also takes away the medical card. It takes away any funding. It takes away any support. It takes away anything that you were hoping that the system was going to help you with. All of that goes away. But I get my kids.
Worth it.
So we're very excited and have this direct placement. And the other neat thing about direct placement was our lawyer had talked with us about direct placement months ago. And we said, no, we don't need that. So we understood it before we were walking in. And, dealing with lawyers can be a scary thing when you're looking at the paperwork going, what does this mean? What does that mean? And James and I both, in our past, have gotten to work with lawyers in our business world, in our work world. So all of a sudden that became not so scary. Again, God was providing and we had no idea. Years ahead of time, he was providing and we had no idea. And during the time when James's faith was shaky, mine kicked in. Hey, these are our kids. Yeah, I don't much care. I don't much care about what anybody else has to say. These are my kids. And they're going to be my kids forever. So we get a phone call. Hey, we've got a couple of dates. May 4th or May 7th. Which do you want? Now, mind you, we had already had shirts printed with April 27th because that was supposed to be our date. Oops. But something else had come up, and our case ended up in front of the Kansas Supreme Court. It's not the way it's supposed to happen, folks. It's just not.
Another one of those situations where our lawyer, who does this all the time, says, I have never seen that before.
I did that in law school, I think. So anyway, they said, call us, they say, we got a couple of dates. We say, great, May 7th. May 7th. James says, I don't have to buy birthday gifts then, because that's my birthday. I'm like, that's right. Unless it doesn't go through, and if it doesn't go through, you need to buy me lots and lots of alcohol. So we had that conversation. And May 7th, we were able to go sign the paperwork with the judge. And we've been blessed with the judge that we have. He's a Christian man. He prays for the kids that are on his docket. God made it all come together. So we have adoption day on May 7th. And then we're just working on being a family and working together on really tightening that bond that we had so that it's not breakable, because that's a big thing when you're dealing with kids out of the foster system. They've been lied to. They've been cheated. They've been robbed.
Been shuttled here and there. If you think about how they got into that situation in the first place, chances are somebody showed up at their door one day, probably a police officer, and said, pack what you need, we're leaving. And they're out of that house. And they're living with someone else. And it may be that they go move in with someone else, and they're there for a long time. It may be they go for a group home for a weekend, or a house for a weekend, and then they move into again to someone else. It's possible for foster children to bounce from home to home sometimes, which is terribly hard on them. We were fortunate with our kids in that they had basically a single foster home the whole time, so they didn't have that bounce, because it was very destructive on kids, so they had some stability.
But it was still important for us to be bonding. So we're bonding, we're doing all this stuff, and then August comes around, it's time for school, and James gets this big raise at work. It's $100 more than the subsidy we lost. God's funny that way. And if you're not paying attention, God will make you pay attention. I said, I wanted more faith. I've got it. It was an awful way to get it. I said, I wanted more patience.
We're still working on that one.
But I have more than I had when I started this. But God provides. He provided everything we needed. And really, we look back and we say He provided everything we needed, and we can directly tie it to tithing. The things to remember about tithing is it's not your money. I know those of us who go here have heard that before. Not your money, it's God's money. He lets you keep 90%. I'm sorry, but tithing is the easiest obedience that there ever is. I can write that check like that if I don't have to bring a ram and a dove and whatever, but I can write that check. And I can be happy doing it. And it's such a joy to be able to do that and knowing that God's going to take care of us. And I'll tell you, I'm a control freak. And my mom says that if you ever lose me in a store, all you have to do is listen for the pennies to scream and you'll find me. Because I am just a cheapskate. But this is easy. Giving God what is His, that is so easy. And you know what? He's given us so many things in return. He's given me faith. He's given me the kids. He takes care of me. He makes sure I have food. He makes sure I have a car to drive and that I'm warm. He takes care of my needs. And I didn't know if he would. Because my faith, not there. But he did, and he was faithful. So I figured the least we can do is write a check. Right?
Right.
And, you know, the other thing that I would encourage everyone is you may not know why you're going through something, but there is a reason. I didn't know why at 5 I thought adoption was such a cool thing. I had no idea. You know, when we found out we couldn't have kids. You know, for me it was a relief. I was like, woo! You know, but God had prepared me from the age of 5. And I'll tell you, I'll be 50 next year, and he's still preparing me for stuff that's coming. And I don't know what it is. But I'm so blessed with what God has done. And, you know, those times when James didn't believe and I did, those were rough conversations. Rough conversations. But again, what I needed, and I didn't know at the time, was I was going to need new faith. And he took care of that too. Our God is so good.
Amen. Should we close in prayer?
Yeah.
Heavenly Father, thank you for being with us. Thank you for putting us through this journey and bringing this family together for us with the support of this church and this church family. I pray that your message has come through and touched some lives today. And thank you for all that you do. In your name I pray. Amen.